crypto, and then you have the few old institutions like the big conglomerates. Everybody wants to talk to these few people, and everybody else also wants to catch the new collectors. But for those in between, where they have not heard of you, or you don't have any existing following, that could be really difficult in a new country.
So before I get a little see on this, so you're saying is we're making a mistake by ignoring 95% of the people. I'll let you jump in.
Okay. I don't know, I think it's like it has many layers of looking at things, you know? It's like, I think the intentions of galleries wanting to come to Korea is very unclear at this point. I think it's a very new market. And for collectors who are more experienced are also confused by that, because that creates a movement in Korean art collecting market. So we have all these people who collect arts, whether you are experienced or you're new to this, is going after one thing, what gallery is, saying that this is an important piece. But is that important piece relevant to our culture, or is it relevant to Asian culture, or is it relevant to global culture? I think that has to have an intention, and I think that's what the collectors want to know, why are you showing this piece of art in Korea in this way at this time and moment? Has to be different showing in Hong Kong or Singapore or China, So I don't know if I am understanding your question correctly, but I think as a point of collector, seeing the Western galleries coming into our culture and bringing artists to our culture, that really influences our local artists, at the same time local collectors.
I think I used to have this preconceived notion that Cézanne means what Cézanne means, whether it's in New York, Paris, Saudi Arabia, or Hong Kong, or Seoul. And I think that was a bad assumption. That when I started coming, it's like, wait a second, there's different cultural histories that are at play. And that it's, again, very presumptuous to think that there's only the MoMA school and organizing of that. To what extent did the two of you learn art history? You've both been involved in America, they're educated there. What was your life history of understanding art? I'll start with you, Lucy, because you have a vantage point that I can relate to.
My experience in art in U.S.
No, just art in general. How you learned about art. Did you learn about Rembrandt? Did you then learn about Impressionists? And you learned about Picasso? There's been this linear thing. Or did you learn about it in a different way? I think kind of permeates it.
For me, art was part of my life. Having a ceramic brand. My grandfather was an artist. He was a ceramic artist, and I ran around the ceramic, atelier as a youngster. So I just never really considered.
Ceramics are really hot. You're lucky now that they came hot in the West 10 years ago.
Right, but it's a process. I think creating art was a process to me. We have to find the right soil. We have to age the soil, and then we make into glaze, and then we have artisans willing this ceramic. And it was I was seeing the whole process of making art is such a long teamwork. And then I went to art school in the States.
You made art?
I went to Art Institute of Chicago, and the most beautiful museum that has, that as a student you have access to. But when I was 18, 19, how much of education are we really interested in? So I think, now I think about it, I wish I explored more and appreciated more. But the massive collections that the US or UK offers to students at the nearest point for you to feel everything was completely different than being around it. And for me, I think that was overwhelming at the same time, made me think about what kind of art that actually resonates me the most and how I can express the art the most. Unfortunately, I was realizing that I was not the painter that I wanted to be. So I learned how to appreciate art. And for me, US was a perfect place for me to do that because the public arts, I was there like 1999 to 2003, and I was in Chicago, so Chicago was changing so much. And, the art always goes hand by hand with our economy, and also a lot of supports from, the institutes, corporates, and everything. And for me, in that sense, was whole, again, going back to my childhood, it's a process of making art is the entire society. So, I don't know, I think that's how I feel. I don't know, Evan.
Evan, what's
You
sort
should
of
do a
like
better job.
your history kind of like where you started and how you got to where all in the sort of same endpoint of being here now. What was the path?
My background is a little bit different. I'm actually so jealous of Lucia having done the full art education. So in college, I was a math and economics major. And
I was a math major too.
Oh, you were? Applied math, yeah. So I was that finance geek, investment banking, Excel spreadsheet, number crunching kind of guy for 10 years before I started.
I did the AI in the 70s.
Oh, wow. What I did was I was also always inspired by my grandparents, growing up in surroundings of ceramics, Chinese ceramics, ink painting. So my grandmother was one of the most elegant ladies. I was really inspired by her taste. So when I started my own business in 2010, that was when I thought, oh, that's actually something I like, and now I have the time to do it. So I started looking at it. In the early days, it was aesthetically pleasing. It was very Asian because of what I was inspired by my family. But then later on, as I had gotten serious, I learned that art history, makes art important and makes art collections important. So what I did was I did a speedy 101 of art history. And
Speed dated art history?
yes, speed dating, exactly. Speed dated art history 101. That's what I always advise serious collectors. You must know the art history and what references and what movements draw current artists and why you think those artists should be important today. So what I did as a fast track is I went to every single major museum, like MoMA, Tate, Louvre, M+ now, and then I walked through 3 times. I get the collection book. I memorize all the periods in history and the masters of each period, and I go back, and then I test myself by going to Sotheby's and Christie's and Art Basel and Frieze, and then I walk through these booths and galleries, and I test myself like a math guy. This is a Picasso, 40s work. This is a minimalism artist. This is Arte Povera. So that's how I kind of did a quick speed dating 101 to catch up to my current collection now.
Do you want to know what I've learned from being in Asia about understanding the history of art? So, and it's more about mainland China. So I met somebody last year, and they're a collector, and they were interested in Basquiat, and they owned Simone Lee. And at the same time, they asked me if it was okay that they liked Manet. Would they do that at the same time? I said, yeah. But then what I realized is for over 1 billion people, they discovered Rembrandt at the same time that they discovered Basquiat. And it was all new information simultaneously. And certainly there's a history of Chinese art that they do, and there's a great cultural history of every Korea, Japan, throughout Asia that are different. But the Western kind of thing, it was all new at precisely the same moment. And it kind of blew my mind that, like, what would it mean to be an intelligent, thoughtful person, aesthetic, to look at it on a completely flat level without the normal hierarchies that I got at age 5, growing up, going to MoMA, and there's the Van Gogh, and you get to the Brancusi and the Picasso. And I wonder if, what you think of that.
When you ask the audience, I mean, a lot of you are not part of this artwork, and a lot of you haven't maybe started collecting. But I think, I thought about like what it is, the definition of collecting. How do we make it more familiar to, actually wanting to buy something that is sometimes highly valuable and something that you want to keep for a long time. Is that, I was talking to my friend, and also I have a friend here whose son is obsessed of collecting things, and it changes simultaneously. So it used to be like a shells, and then it goes into peacock feathers, and it goes into cups, But it's like, I think it's obsession. And then if you think about it, in your memories, you collected something, But I think that little values to your taste and wanting to understand should not like one day I collect shells and tomorrow I'm going to collect cups, You need to collect same thing over and over to understand what you like the best. So, I think that's really important for anything. I think Evan's, sort of experience is going to museums and collecting his feelings to different museums and seeing the same artists, same pieces in different spaces and understanding how it looks best at certain, like atmosphere or he will catch something else. And for me, I think collecting is very personal because I don't really know how to get rid of things because...
Well, let's talk about collecting for a second. Which is the more powerful thing? The hunting of it or the having it?
I think both,
Evan?
I think hunting.
Yeah.
Hunting is fun. Then you have it, you can stick it in the closet because you know you have it.
Yes. Yeah.
So how different is it than like buying your 60th cashmere sweater? Is it or your 40th pair of Air Jordans? Is it a similar thing?
I think I agree with Lucia. It's about the storytelling, right? It's like why the 60 cashmere sweater, or why the 100 watches, or why the 20 Lamborghinis, right? It's like, oh, I like this model, or I like timepiece because time is meaningful to you, or if it's ceramics, you have anything from Korean to Japanese to Chinese ceramics, and or lacquer.
I don't get it because I don't own anything, so I'm like really weird to be in a business based on selling things to people, helping people buy things, because I think we have enough stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm fortunately a tiny minority.
Yeah.
And I agree, most people, it's a compulsion to have coins and art and whatever.
I definitely I want to hunt, but at the same time, I want to hunt the person. I want to hunt artists. I'm so into finding artists that I really like and want to support forever. But it takes time. It's like dating, but until you find your husband, you will go through a few boyfriends. So it's the same thing.
So how do you get to that point of going from getting engaged to getting married? I mean, how do you pull the trigger? What's your decision process?
It's all about the timing. Yes. I don't know. It's like it's out of your plan. It happens, but without a question, Is there a collection? I mean, if you don't collect anything, that I totally agree you shouldn't. My parents are going through their 70s and they don't want to have anything. But is there something?
You want me in my 70s?
No. Is there something, is that any painting or any arts that you feel so personal that you want to not get rid of? And what's the
Every so
intention?
often, maybe 2 or 3 times in my life, I really want that. And it's kind of shocks me. So early on in COVID, everybody remember COVID? You remember that thing, you know? In 2020, when it looked like the art market and the economy would completely collapse, right? We thought we may never sell another work of art, we may all be destitute. I decided I wanted to buy something. I'm like, I'm not insane. And so there was a work of art that I'd always loved, and suddenly it was available. And it's like, well, no one, this is like March or April 2020. It's like, well, I saw this thing online. They've never been willing to sell that. I'm going to call them. It was a sort of sculptural focus by the artist Charles Ray. And it's like, I love it. It hangs in my kitchen. It looks ridiculous. It looks like a giant cheeseburger. And it's like, so every 10 or 20 years I might have like a compulsion, but I resist it. Have anyone?
Or I actually have a question for everyone too.
Oh.
Yeah, since they put me in the middle. So, you, in a way, I think ceramic is so beautiful because it's something that lasts forever, right?
Yeah.
So you inherited so many treasures
Yeah.
that, so many people cannot even have access to.
Yeah.
Are there, is there any piece that you want to talk about that you want to maybe give it to the next generation and why?
I think, I didn't assemble the ceramics collection, but, actually I went through a re-archiving of my great-grandparents' collection just a few years ago during COVID, when you had nothing better else to do during lockdown. And going back to the storytelling, I could actually understand why my, great-grandparents or grandparents bought those pieces because they were kind of the same style, the glazing, the craftsmanship are very similar, even though they encompass anything from Qing to Ming to earlier dynasties. So I thought by re-archiving it from 3 generations later and to write a story about it, I asked one of my antique friends to do an essay about it. I thought, wow, that's really powerful because as if I were to pass this to the next generation or the next generation, there's a story to say about your grandparents or your great-grandparents or your great-great-grandparents outside of who they were, but their taste and what role they played in collecting in that point in time and in that historical context. So, yeah, totally.
I would make the point that we tend to equate collector and collection, and they don't always completely overlap. There are some great collectors who don't have great collections, and there are some great collections put together by people who aren't really great collectors, if that makes sense to you. And it's important to understand which you are. And I think that the ideal world is when you're both, and that works when your collection tells a story. There's a narrative that's personal. It can deviate. Like I do this thing. It's a guy who only collected pictures of hands. It's a great art collection. And every so often you would have something else. If it tells, and if you've been starting to collect for a while, you might be surprised to learn that you all have a narrative that you've intuitively developed that you may not even be aware of. Do you know what your narrative might be for your collection?
I think I go through phases. I think for a few years, every piece I liked happened to be a female artist by female artists, and then I was just like, I'm not feminist, I refuse.
I'm a feminist.
But now I think I'm in the phase where I like conceptual and more versatile in their experiences, meaning that they're not painter, they're not filmmaker, they're not this, but they are more about intellectual artists. Because I'm looking forward to like what they're gonna do next. And you know, since the society is changing so much, you know, the AI is coming in. It's not. I think artists need to survive in a way of, you know, with their techniques and also with their minds and brains. So for me, it's artists who are willing to be more open-minded are the ones that I'm drawn to.
Evan?
You know, I had a lot of narratives when I started collecting, but I'm starting to really narrow down to a few. I think one narrative that's particularly important to me, as Josh knows, as well as supporting younger local artists and Chinese artists, either from Hong Kong or Greater China or Asia, and because you know they play such a role in the society we live in. Also because I support the institutions locally, it's great and really rewarding to see how they grow from learning and get to the stage where we can provide them with opportunities abroad, to do residencies, to explore Western practices and bring that home and make a name for home. So I think that's one of the most powerful narratives that I have in my collecting journey.
So let's drill down another level. So you seem to both have an idea what and how of what. So my question is how. We were talking on the phone about, I'm an art advisor, so I have a vantage point that I can come to. Do you think art advisors, museum curators, gallerists are their source of information, or are you out there on your own, making your own judgments, and most specifically, since it's self-interested, but about art advisors and how prevalent are they this side of the Pacific?
I'll start first. I think, you know, anyone would be lucky to have an advisor like Josh, because there's not many quality advisors in Asia, unfortunately, because I think the ecosystem was not developed in that way. It was mainly, like for example, Hong Kong, it's mainly the mega galleries and the auction houses, and then there were only like a handful of serious full-time advisors. I think it's a cultural thing as well in Asia, because people don't really like to pay fees. So they're kind of scared, you know, when they get the idea of an advisor. But I think it's really important to work with one, and an independent one, as you assemble your collection. Because unfortunately, like any other business world, everybody has their own interest, and it's best to have an independent advisor who takes care of your interest, not their interest. Yeah.
So, I mean, since you know, for the audience, you know, they live in Korea. You know, they want to find a great art advisor for them to at least just learn about what's going on in Korea. What's the approach they should do?
Well, that's a great question. I would say not so much specific Korea versus China versus Japan. I remember 5 or 10 years ago I was talking to some young man who was a Chinese art advisor, and he told me he had to be able to answer every question by their client and say that they knew everything. It's like, well, that's a red flag. It's like, that's impossible. So somebody who's able to say, I don't know about that. Let me find out. I know the person who's the expert in that. Why are you interested in that? And who's able to say, my job is not to tell you what you love. It's like we were talking before about a connection. It's like looking work of art, it's kind of a chemical reaction. I might say that's beautiful, and you go, it's good, but it's not beautiful. It's like a man or woman, you might go, he's sexy, I might go, no. Same with the work of art, but to help you come to terms with that, to understand why you're attracted, to find your own story, and then to save if you're spending a lot of money, save you from doing stupid shit. Because you can do stupid shit. The more you spend, the dumber you can get. At the same time, you think you're smarter. So I think these kinds of discussions take a while. And having, the other point I would make, and it's interesting, is like, we'll come back to what you guys do. Most of the week, when you're dealing, and I want to talk to you about your business, you're the smartest man or woman in the room. When we're talking about, real estate in the West End of London, you know your shit. When you're talking about developing these brands, you know more than anybody you're talking to. Now you're at Frieze or Kiaf, and let me tell you, you're not the smartest guy in the room. And that can be terrifying. And it can be off-putting. Because you know what you know. And suddenly, if you anybody play poker? It's a listen. Haven't you? Okay. If you don't know who the mark is in the game, it's you. So these kinds of conversations, I think, are really important. You need to understand, a lot of people are threatened by knowledge. So their art advisors scare them. Oh, they'll make me feel stupid. I have that problem because I'm older with young people, and they're like, oh, he's not going to pay attention to me, they'll think I'm dumb. And I think a good art advisor learns from their client. As much, we teach them a lot, sure, but we're learning about them. Does that?
Yeah, I think so.
Have you signed up?
I think, these days I walk around Frieze or Kiaf, and, there are a lot of galleries just standing around, but it's very intimidating to go talk to them if you don't know them, because they sort of have idea of like who looks like a collector or not, But I guess just on behalf of the audience, what are the ways for them to like engage conversation as a sort of like, when you say dumb, like what is a very genuine, smart question to ask to like a specialist like you?
A bunch of ideas there. It's like, if they start talking about who else is collecting it, that's not interesting. I don't care that you tell me that the tape one, that's not the place to start. So it's like, I think there's a more fundamental question. It's like, how do I get information? There's, 400 galleries in these 2 floors. So if you went to each of them for 2 minutes, that would be 800 minutes. That would take you 13 hours. And if you spent, that's 5 seconds in artwork, how could you possibly manage that information? So the first is like, how do I get information? Which galleries from my friends do I go to? What museums do I study? Which magazines do I get? You really need to figure out some sort of system to filter it down, because otherwise it's impossible. Nobody can tell me they went to maybe Hanzo or Wisconsin, they went everywhere, but they went everywhere. And then it's like, what I would suggest is, now this is art fair tips, there's a lot of action on day one. And I can tell the quality of the fair by the relative average value of the handbag being carried, which was, I'm going to say, about $20,000 on Wednesday and about $12 on Thursday. Is go later in the week when it's not the big VIP, and stand there and ask a question. And you're more important to a junior gallery person on day 4 who knows no one than you are to the owner of Larry Gagosian Gallery. He ain't talking to us. He wouldn't talk to you on day 1. He doesn't even want to talk to me on day 1 unless I want to buy something. So it's like, have a plan for how to gather information. And the more you go, I think it's part of the whole journey.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I certainly disagree with these.
No, I agree with you. I still remember, the first year, we attended fairs. Everybody is like drawn by the anxiety, right? Oh, waiting list, and oh, this is sold out. This is the only work. This is so special. You have 30 minutes.
You guys believe that shit?
Yeah, we believe that in the first, few years, and I think people shouldn't make that mistake and
walk
be
away from the work.
Yeah.
Take a walk. See if you even remember what it looks like.
Yes.
Because I'm going to tell you, a lot of times you go, oh yeah, was it green? Red?
Only to find out there are 10 better works elsewhere. Yeah, of the same artist elsewhere.
Yeah, I think that's why, if you get a chance, if you have artist friends, I think visiting their studios is very important. Asking a lot of questions to artists is more important than asking questions to gallery, owners or curators, other people, because I think in that it's, for me, also I'm coming from food, so I work with a lot of chefs. But when I look at, the process of their imagination and creativity, if I cannot taste in their food, it's not authentic. So I think art expression can be also authentic, and that has to link to artists' philosophy, to their expressions. And it's in every details. What color do they use? What texture do they want to express? What message do they want to carry out? What impact they want to have in this artwork with their piece? Because otherwise, it's just another piece of art.
And I think we all have a system of how we look at our work of art. Just most people don't know the process. And our way I do this with classes and even groups of collectors is what do you actually do when you stand in front of a work of art? And I'm going to I'll explain what I do and give you time to think. So I look at something and I go, how does it fit into art history? It's the first question. So when was it made? Where does it fit? Now, then I go, how does it fit into the art market? And then I go to the aesthetics. And that's my general, I'm doing that in 5 seconds or 5 minutes. Now, my wife starts the opposite. She goes to the beauty and the form. And she starts there, and then she goes a different way. And I think if you understand a little bit of, we are using a process to judge these images. They're shooting passes. So, do you know what your process is?
I'm the same as Josh, literally in that ranking. I think the early days, you would go as aesthetics first, and then you kind of know. Now I kind of can work backwards of the booths. If I were a booth owner, I would know that abstract floral, bright colors, $10,000 or below would sell the easiest, right? And then whatever conceptual sculpture would probably not sell unless it is a serious collection or institution. So, but I think it's also fair for day 3, 4 visitors, like Josh says. There are a lot of art lovers. You don't have to be a collector, where they're shopping for their new home or their new space, and they just want something decorative. And I think that's totally okay too, because I think it's still better to buy a decorative piece of art than sorry to say this here, a dress or like a handbag. I still think it's a better use of money to buy a nice piece of art which you can keep for life and enjoy every day than a handbag. Yeah.
Now, before we go, we're going to go for questions pretty soon. But what do we have to learn in the art world, in the luxury world, and to some degree, your business is branding and food and restaurants? What does the art world not get that you get that we could learn from you? There's something. Taste the food instead of look at the food?
You don't gain weight. No, but that's I really like the question that you asked. So just to give a different perspective completely, for everyone. I think when I choose art, the first thing is I increase my budget. You know, I can like a $1 million art or $20 billion art, but if I can't buy it, then it's not in my collection. So my financial status will be.
Do you like it more if it's more expensive?
No.
People like wine if it's more expensive.
Oh
right?
yeah, some people, but not the ones who actually know the taste of wine. And then second, I'll consider how would look like in my space. Do I even have a space for this? And then third will be the relevance of it. Is it going to inspire me for a very long time? Because it's like pairing, like wine. Romani Conti was never Romani Conti when it was first appeared. It's just everything accumulates, and everything accumulates by community. It's not one person that makes something special. It's a 10 person, a million people, or 10 million people that makes that desirable and special. So the artwork or the food work, I think it's the same. We have the system of Michelin or things, but it's like if you think about it, it's only a very well-trained a few inspectors who makes this worldly famous restaurants and putting in a map and changing the society of the Korean cuisine or Japanese cuisine or anything else. But what we get is that I think the creation of food is very difficult and in a way that because of the environment's changing. I was jokingly saying that the strawberries that the same farmer will make will taste different every year because of that. So I think we do have more flexibility and we do have a little bit more freedom, and I think we do have a little bit more of that depth of understanding one material in a more freely way.
So I think this might be a good time to see if there's any questions from the audience. Is that culturally okay?